Is all the fuss about being a manager? Isn't it easy? We're people. How hard can it be to manage a team of people? People say it's common sense. I'll tell you a story about some cows. Imagine you saw a field of cows and there's a storm coming in. Do you move the cows to the top paddock? Do you keep them in the field that they're in, or do you put them in the shed to keep them out of the rain? I don't know because I have no common sense, whereas a farmer would know because they have common sense. People management isn't common sense unless you've actually managed a team, and then you've got experience to draw on. So how do you actually learn how to manage a team then before you have to manage a team, because you haven't got that common sense and you haven't seen the weird and wonderful things that happen when you manage people, because they are not logical. They don't do what is supposed to happen. I worked in HR for 4 years and became an HR manager and suddenly had an HR advisor. My first experience managing somebody didn't go well at all. I micromanaged. I did things that I thought were correct that I'd been advising managers to do, and it ended up with her in tears. I have since learned how to manage better, and I also decided to write management bites so that others could actually learn how do you learn to manage a team properly, because some of the books out there are very theoretic and they're not actually real life. So I put together, based on my own experience and also based on hundreds of managers that I'd worked with, and actually wrote Management Bites, which is a bite-sized guide to different aspects of managing a team. I shared lots of practical tools and techniques that actually really work in real life. They're not just theory, and I've used the theory, and sometimes the theory doesn't work, and you do end up with tears and issues and people not talking to each other. So I wanted to share actually what does work. I followed that up with Employment Bites, which is about HR, how do you put in place good HR, Training Bites, which is how do you develop training and development for your business, and Safety Bites, how do you build a safety culture. To share that learning further, so built the Management Bites training program. There's several ways you can access the different modules in the program, which are based on chapters from the book. You can either have a facilitated workshop, a self-run workshop, or online. In terms of a facilitated workshop, this is where you actually contract us in. There are a team of accredited facilitators for the Management Bites program around the world, based in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and the US. So if you do want somebody to come in and actually run a workshop for you, then you can purchase a facilitated workshop. You can also, if you're an experienced learning and development person and you can actually run workshops yourself, you've got the facilitation skills, but you don't have the time to develop the materials, you can actually also buy off-the-shelf workshops which have a pack of slides. You can put your own company logo in, a facilitator's guide, so it's got what you need to cover in each of the sections, how to present, not a script, but the key points that you need to cover, so you can add your own style to it, and workbooks as well. However, you may not have the time, or you may not have the skills or enjoy facilitating workshops. So the other option which you can purchase with the Management Bites program is a self-run workshop. How can a workshop run itself, you ask? Well, what you do is you think about people in your business and you choose somebody who you think would actually be a good facilitator. This could be a people manager who's actually very good at presenting. It could be someone that's wanting to grow their presentation skills, or someone in your HR team who's good at L&D. You choose that person, and then they get sent a link with online coaching modules from me around how to present each of the sections of that module, and also videos that they can actually use. So they don't have to learn the content, but there are tips around how they facilitate the discussions, what's covered in the videos, they can watch the videos, how do you run the workshop and make it flow and coherent. Then they can actually run the workshop for anywhere from 2 people through to 20 people. They've got the video library so they can play the different videos. They don't have to learn the content. They've also got the discussion exercises, so after each video they actually run a facilitated discussion so that managers or potential managers who are doing the training can actually still get that same learning and discussion as they would from a facilitated workshop. And then finally, if you have got people, you're not going to be able to bring them together, you could also purchase the Management Bytes online modules. How these work is each module has a number of short videos for the person to actually watch. There are then quizzes to actually test their knowledge. And there are also case studies, so they have to actually read a particular case study and then actually think about and answer questions about that case study. They also go through a knowledge assessment at the start and the end of the module so that they can actually assess where their skills are at and where their skills are after actually completing the module. They can do it on their computer, their laptop, their tablet, their phone. They can access it from wherever they want, and they can come back and complete it in small chunks. They don't have to do the whole thing at once. So what do we cover in the program? What are the different modules you can purchase? Modules 1 to 6 we call the core modules. The first one is about me as a manager. So what often happens when you move into a people management role, you don't actually think about the type of manager that you want to be and the managers that you've had and the skills that you've got that are transferable and the skills which may cause some issues. So me as a manager actually covers all of that, what the skills are that you need, the different challenges that come up, what you should be spending your time on, and developing your own management style. Employment law, this is for New Zealand only, and covers some of the essential employment law that managers need to know. If you are running a whole program and purchasing a number of modules in other countries, then this is where either you might want to bring in an employment lawyer, or if your HR team are knowledgeable about employment law, then covering that off by presenting that yourself. Perfect performance reviews. This is actually around how do you rate and deal with those performance discussions, however often you need to have them. What happens when people over or underrate themselves? What happens when it's not clear what somebody's achieved? How do you deal with all those challenges, and how do you have an engaging conversation and adapt your style for your high performers, for your solid dependable people, for your low performers? How do you adapt your review to make sure everyone's on board? Managing poor performance, this is unfortunately our most popular module. So this is what do you do when people actually aren't performing? How do you give feedback? And it covers off cultures like New Zealand and the UK where actually giving very constructive feedback isn't well received. You can't actually just be honest and say, hey, you're not doing a good job. So what are the ways you can actually give feedback that don't make people upset and don't make them defensive? And then how do you put a performance plan in place to help them improve? And then we've got our recruitment module, so successful selection, how do you actually put together shortlisting and evaluations and assessments, and then inspired interviews if you are sitting on an interview panel or you are interviewing candidates for a role. Modules 7 to 10 are around effectiveness. So these make you better as a manager. We've got clever communication. So this is actually based on a lot of the different 4-factor models, understanding your own style, understanding your teams, and then how do you adapt your communications to the different people in your workplace? How do you deal with conflict, and how do you give feedback? Those are key skills as a manager that can trip a lot of people up and can be quite uncomfortable. This is also one of our most popular modules and is one where people absolutely rave. They love it at the end. They say, this is now, I understand why I'm not getting on with my team. I understand why these 2 people in my team are fighting with each other. People also say, I'm now going to go home and think about this with my spouse or partner. Taming time and delegating. So what are some of the tools you can use to make yourself more organised? And unlike all other time management workshops that I've ever seen in my entire life, what this is based on is your communication style actually also dictates the way you actually manage yourself and make decisions and deal with issues. And so our Taming Time module is actually around understanding your time management style, what are the strengths, and then how can you overcome some of the challenges. And then what's the secret to delegating and making sure people understand what you're talking about. And then we have a module on meetings. So if you are in an organisation that runs a lot of meetings, how do you set great agendas? How do you deal with the different issues that come up in meetings and challenging people? And then problem solving. How do you actually make sure you really get down to the root cause of a problem? How do you make decisions? How do you innovate? Modules 11 to 16 are around engagement. So this is around motivation and coaching. I'm happy to say is also one of our more popular modules. So how do you build intrinsic motivation where people are excited to come to work? What are the different ways you can recognize and reward people without necessarily having any money or budget to do it? How do you actually use coaching to help people come up with solutions themselves so you don't have to have the monkey on your back and keep trying to solve issues all the time? And then another module on how to develop your team. What are the different ways to train them, develop their skills, help them actually overcome challenges and look forward in their career and also get better at the role they're currently doing. Leading change, if you're introducing a new system or things are changing in your business, what are the stages of change? How do you understand and make sure you know where people are, and how do you take people through and build their resilience to change and make sure your change is successful? Diversity and inclusion, this is around how do you understand the differences between different cultures, genders, ethnicities, ages, generations, all the things that make up a diverse workplace, and how do you build an inclusive culture so that everybody actually feels part of the team and they feel welcome. Leading on from that is high performance teams, which is based on the Belbin high performance team roles, and in this you do get a Belbin report, so it actually shows the role you play in a team, the way others see you, and talk through the different ways you can take your team through the different stages and into high performance. And then lastly, mentoring. Many companies introduce mentoring and they never do any training on how to be a good mentor. So this module actually covers what is mentoring, the skills that you need, how to hone those skills, and how to overcome some of the issues around mentoring. There's also a shorter module for mentorees or mentees that you can also run as well. So the key thing is management isn't easy. It's not actually common sense until you've got a base of experience to build on. But if you tackle it bite by bite, so you work out what are the issues, what are the areas that I need to learn about, and I will work through systematically and upskill myself in those areas, then you can learn to be a great manager. You may not actually even enjoy the people side of things. A lot of people get promoted because they're technical experts. They're not actually that keen on the people stuff, but that's the only career path that exists in many organisations. If you're in that boat, management actually is a process, and there are processes you can put in place even if you're not that excited about the people stuff. That means you can be a respected and engaging manager. So if you want to find out more about Management Bites the book or any of the modules, whether it's a workshop or an online or a self-run, you can go to managementbites.com, so mgmtbites.com, or managementtraining.co.nz if you're in New Zealand. If you're not really sure where you need training in, we also have a management map which has all the different areas of managing a team and questions around what would you actually find useful to have training in, or is it an area that's not useful for you at the moment, or is it an area you've already had training in? And this gives you a map of where you want to focus your time, because being a manager, you've often got an enormous amount of responsibilities. You haven't got a lot of time for your own development, so you need to be very focused with the time that you do have and find a way to actually upskill in those areas. That's what Management Bites is about, doing it bite by bite. So I hope that's given you some idea of the Management Bites program, and there is further information on both of those websites.